Hi, I'm David Reinstein, the founder of the Unjournal. We're making some videos making the case for the Unjournal and journal independent public expert evaluation, explaining how it works and how you can engage, and answering some questions that authors and other people have or might have about our processes. The following is a NotebookLM generated video based on my notes and slides. I watched it. It's basically accurate. I give some audio commentary below. I know you might not love AI generated, partially generated content, but I hope this is a good compromise given our limited communications budget and my own tendency to stumble over my words.
So, here's a wild thought. What if we rated world-changing scientific research with the same kind of detail we use to rate a new phone?
Not quite the same. We're commissioning experts, not crowdsourcing.
It sounds a little strange, I know, but it's at the heart of a really fascinating new idea for how we can evaluate science. Let's get into it.
It all starts with this question, which, when you stop and think about it, is kind of weird, right? We have these incredibly detailed, multifaceted consumer reports for pretty much everything we buy. But for scientific research, the stuff that literally shapes our future, the main seal of approval is often just getting published in a specific journal. It just feels like a massive mismatch.
And the journal process can take years until you get an outcome, and even then you still don't know why it was accepted in a particular journal.
And yeah, this slide just nails the point. On one side, you've got these super detailed ratings for something like cell phone service, value, voice, data, all of it. On the other, you see a vision for what that could look like for science. Specific ratings for methodology, for data quality, for clarity, for impact. So why on earth does one exist and not the other?
Well, to understand why, we've got to look at how the current system was built in the first place. And it's a system that, in a lot of ways, is basically a relic from a completely different technological era.
Think about it. The very first scientific journals, they popped up centuries ago in a world defined by physical stuff. Printing and shipping paper was expensive, and the limited space in each journal acted as a natural filter. Only a handful of things could actually get published, so the stuff that did make it in, well, it was automatically seen as important.
Then, of course, the internet changed everything. Suddenly, the cost to publish and share knowledge just plummeted to basically zero. But here's the crazy part, the real paradox. While the technology for sharing took this giant leap forward, the systems for evaluating research and for rewarding careers, things like getting tenure, they stayed firmly locked into that old, prestigious journal system. And this has created what a lot of people are now calling—
That's really a new term. Not a lot of people use it.
Researchers are just trapped. Their work gets confined to these static, unchangeable documents, a lot of the time hidden behind crazy expensive paywalls, and they're forced to conform to the rigid, often outdated rules of traditional journals.
This serves as a barrier to transparency, open science, and replication.
Researchers are just trapped. Their work gets confined to these static, unchangeable documents, a lot of the time hidden behind crazy expensive paywalls, and they're forced to conform to the rigid, often outdated rules of traditional journals. The result is this unbelievably inefficient process called journal shopping. So a researcher submits their paper, they wait, they get rejected. Then they might revise it, submit it to another journal, wait again, get rejected again, and this whole cycle can go on for years. It is a colossal waste of brain power across the entire scientific community. Time that could be spent, actually making new discoveries.
It doesn't just waste the author's time, but wastes time for the reviewers and the editors who might spend a day and a half or more doing these reviews, raising critiques of the paper that maybe were raised the last time it was submitted to a journal or the previous time, unbeknownst to them, because none of these reviews are ever made public.
So, how do you break out of a prison like that? Well, an initiative called the Unjournal has a really powerful and actually pretty simple idea. The core innovation is something they call journal independent evaluation. It's a simple but kind of radical concept. What if we just completely separate the act of evaluating the quality of a piece of research from the act of publishing it in one specific journal? Let's unbundle those two things.
Okay, so that's the big idea. But how does this actually work in practice? Let's break down the system that the Unjournal has built.
The whole process has 4 main steps. First, research is either submitted by the authors themselves or it's selected by the Unjournal's team from work that's already publicly available. Next, they prioritize it based on its potential for real-world impact. Then, and this is a huge difference, they commission and pay expert evaluators to do a really rigorous review. And finally, they publish a detailed public evaluation package for everyone to see.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Instead of just a simple accept or reject, the research gets this rich, multi-dimensional report card. It gets rated across a bunch of different criteria, like the quality of the methods, its real-world relevance, and how it advances knowledge. You can even compare two different papers side by side and see their strengths and weaknesses.
You can see this on our data dashboard.
Now, a really crucial point here is that they aren't trying to just blow up the old system overnight. This quote captures their strategy perfectly. They're trying to build a bridge to a new system, not ask people to jump off a bridge. Researchers can still submit their work to traditional journals if they want. The unjournal evaluation is just an extra, public layer of credibility. It's a bridge, not a leap of faith.
So why does all of this matter? What's the big payoff? Well, let's talk about the incredible benefits that this kind of open, independent evaluation could unlock. First and foremost, true open access. Right now, publishing fees can be astronomical. I mean, as this article points out, the average fee for a top journal can be over $3,000. For some academics in Africa, that's equivalent to half a year's salary. Just think about that. A public evaluation system totally removes that barrier. Second, it frees research from that PDF prison we talked about. Once the evaluation isn't tied to a static paper format, the possibilities just explode. You can have things like interactive data visualizations, notebooks with live runnable code, and dashboards that let you explore different analytical choices. Research stops being a dead document and becomes a living, updatable project.
These more flexible formats are really useful for open science, replication, and robustness checking. You can see the specification curve interaction on the right. On the left, you see something from a journal that's now defunct called distill.pub in machine learning, which offered great interactive explanations. But the fact that this can be an updatable, improvable process is perhaps the most important. In the current system, once an author gets paper published in a journal, they have little natural way and no incentive to improve that work. Even if the next day they realize they did something they could have done much better, they find better data, better methods, they'd have to pretend it's a whole new paper and try to sell it again to a new journal, which naturally confuses readers. In the system that we're proposing and building, you get an evaluation of your research in a certain state, and then if you find a way to improve it, you can get a new evaluation, improve its credibility, and this could help you in your career as well.
This isn't some far-off hypothetical either. This is happening now. On the left here, you can see an interactive model from a paper where you can actually see how the AI thinks. And on the right, that's a dashboard that lets you instantly see how changing your assumptions affects the final results. This is what science can look like in the 21st century. And finally, it all brings us back to the researchers themselves. By providing prompt, credible public feedback, a system like this drastically reduces that need for endless journal shopping. It lets scientists focus their time and their energy on what really matters, doing better science.
But, as with any big idea that challenges the way things have always been done, there's a major hurdle to overcome.
It's something called the collective action problem. Think of it like traffic. Everyone knows that if we all took public transit, the roads would be better for everyone. But for any one person, it's just easier to drive their own car. It's the same thing here. Even if everyone agrees a new system would be better for science as a whole, it's really risky for one researcher to just abandon the old rules all by themselves. They're afraid they'll be punished by the system that exists right now.
Also an issue for universities, research groups, etc. But some of these are in the position to take the lead and kickstart this new system.
So how do you solve it? Well, you need a critical mass. You need a big enough group of early adopters, researchers, funders, universities, to all band together and create momentum. They have to shift the feeling from a fear of standing out to a fear of missing out on a much better way of doing things.
We'll cover in another video with a specific theory of change involving making our evaluations and ratings very visible before the standard referee process and shifting a few grant makers, prominent universities, or even governments towards making this a condition for grants, promotion, tenure,
Which in the
etc.
end leaves us with a much bigger question. The rules of science, they were designed in the age of the printing press. We now live in the age of the internet. So how do we know when it's finally time to fundamentally rewrite the rules for our most important systems?